Hello and welcome to episode 203 of the official EstablishRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan. I'm one of the co-founders here at ETR. And today we have a very, very, very special guest. This is a young man who has been in the poker streets. He has been in and is in the data analytics and modeling streets. He's been in the DFS streets, I believe. He's an author. And now he is changing the world of in-game betting through his company, Deck Prism Sports. It is Matthew Davidow. Matthew, how's it going?
Great. Thanks for having me on, Adam.
Really appreciate you being here. I think we're going to learn a lot today about the sports betting world, which we were talking a little bit pre-show, and Matt had some interesting things to say that I would have disagreed with originally. So we're going to get into all that for sure. Before we get into today's show, I want to remind everyone this program is brought to you by our friends at Underdog Fantasy. It is best ball season, and Underdog is undoubtedly the best ball platform. For details on our promos with them, head to the best ball tab on the site. All right, we have a ton to get to today, but first I want to get some background on Matthew. Have you ever had a quote unquote real job? Because I know you were in the poker streets. Did you go straight into the poker streets, or have you ever had really a real job coming up?
I actually managed a restaurant delivery company in college. So yes, well, while playing poker, and then when I made enough playing poker, the job went away. Never came back, knock on wood.
Yeah. Okay. So how'd you find poker? Was this part of the moneymaker boom?
No, this was before that. So this was like 97. I went to college at Arizona State. They have Indian casinos there with poker. Mm-hmm. Got out there, knew nobody, joined a fraternity. Turned out they make you work for those. They kicked me out in a week. So the night they kicked me out, I'm like, man, I don't know what to do. So I hit the casino.
Okay, yeah. I mean, back then there was no such thing as like a no limit cash game or anything like that. What were you playing?
It was limit hold'em. Everything. Yeah. Limit hold'em. Or the first game I played was actually 7-card stud. 7-card stud. And I lost my $100 pretty quick.
Yeah. First game I ever played was at Borgata. This was in 2003 or so. It was 6-12 limit hold'em. And I played limit hold'em for a long time also. It's actually a really good foundation for, I think, for people who want to play no limit. But anyways, so you made some money playing poker. You left Arizona State. Then what?
Yeah, well, while I was still there, we actually, my friend and I, we started a billiard manufacturing company, which he was already doing it. Seemed like a good idea at the time. It was not. I could blame 9/11 because that happened like shortly after we actually, started. But, more the problem was, terrible business plan, terrible execution. Managed to, lose a bunch of money, to the point to where we were so out of money that the end of the month would come, right? First we lost our apartment. And then we were living in our shop. The end of the month would come, and if we didn't have the money for the rent, they would come lock the apartment. I mean, the shop, right? But they'd lock it from the outside. They couldn't get in if you had it locked. Mm-hmm. So we had to make sure they would come locking, that we kept somebody inside, so that when they jammed the front lock, we could still, access it was a little industrial park, and yeah. So we the last time that happened, we were dead broke. Sold the equipment for $2,000 and basically just started playing pool and poker we got in our car and drove off.
Wow. What a life. What year was this around?
That was 2002.
Okay. So you were kind of already playing poker when the boom hit, which I said was a really big advantage. I mean, obviously if you were playing when the boom hit, you had a big leg up on everybody else. I assume you started printing pretty easily. And is that where kind of it all rolled up the roll and all that?
Yes and no. We were playing live at the time, and this was before. 2002 was. Games were good, but games were also small. We ended up in Tunica, Mississippi, where we figured we found out they'd give us a free room if we showed up at the poker game and free food. That was a good deal at the time. We were playing, basically 10, 20 hold'em live, with, you're getting 25, 30 hands an hour. You earn the game for sure, but, you ain't getting rich there. Yeah. And then moved to Vegas a couple years after that. That's where we really started, got online, partying. That's when they had the skins, et cetera. But, for just me, I was always very conservative. Like, I was always concerned about, it was my only way to make a living. I was concerned that I would lose that way to make a living. So I was conservative, stayed in games I could beat, et cetera, et cetera. Party kills the skins probably, I want to say this was November 05. We're like, I don't know if I'm old. Probably most of these people don't remember, but there used to be skins of Party Poker where you could get rake back accounts from them basically. And when Party killed those, it was like a wake up call to me that this wasn't going to last forever. And I had to like take my shot. I couldn't just sit there in my apartment and, play my poker and make my $20-$30 an hour for, the rest of my life. It just wasn't going to be a thing. So I started trying to, ramp up. I played sit and goes, ran good, got up to the $200 sit and goes. There was, 2+2 was big at the time. Mm-hmm. And I would try to get on the forum, being the socially awkward creature that I am. I don't think I was really a hit there. Well, I'd post, no one cared, and this was like the people, my games, remember this is every day. And there's probably like 10 to 12 people that are making a living in the sit and goes, just playing every day, 8 to 10 tabling at a time, so each game would have like, I don't know, 6 like more random people that played less, recreational players and like 3 pros. This was like the general structure of the game. And, there'd be people there was definitely people that were like ROI of over 10%. And my ROI was like 3.5%. Like, I was a volume player. Mm-hmm. But then they had the 2+2 group. They had a get together in Las Vegas. Of course, me being not really part of the group, I was not invited, which was interesting because I lived in Vegas. I would have had to go far. So every single pro that's in my games is in this 2+2 clique, goes to Vegas for the weekend. Well, it just so happens that Party decides this is the weekend that they're going to really promote their sit and goes. So they go from having $200 of what were all turbos. So they started having slower tournaments, and they opened up $500 tournaments. So basically, after they pushed this promo, I'm not sure exactly how they were getting their other players into the sit and goes, but you could just start as many $500 turbos or slow ones as you wanted. So the play was so bad, and this is like, I'm guessing most of the listeners sit and goes, but it's a 5-3-2 payout structure. So like, if everybody busts everybody else out and you do nothing, you just win over and over again. Well, That's what happened. Like every single tournament, before I even noticed it, as I was folding hands, I'd be heads up. An 8-1, chip deficit, obviously, but over and over again. So like, there's no pros. There's all. I don't know where these people were coming from. Yeah. Who didn't understand at all the sit and go structure, but they didn't. So I played for like 30 straight hours, made a boatload of money, and then poker became less fun after that. And I said, let's get into some sports.
Yeah. So that's a great story. I know a lot of people have a lot of people our age have similar stories from poker. A lot of us though moved to DFS. It sounds like you moved more to sports. Did you play DFS at all? Did you get into DFS, or did you just go straight to sports? I DFS, when the year DFS hit really big, I had just moved back to Las Vegas with my wife. We had just decided to like stay there, settle, for lack of a better term, and DFS popped up, and wow, this looks interesting. Started playing started playing the baseball, the DFS, just myself, basically. I was using our sports models and like tweaking them in a way that worked for DFS. But for the most part, I was just originally just like, hand playing like lineups in the larger tournaments, basically. I played 8 to 10 lineups a day, thereabouts. And this was in you could play 6 from a team then. They changed the rule sometime later. But man, I never had more fun than those sweats. Those were just the best. Those were the best sweats. It was only like I started playing in July, I think, and then in September, Nevada made the fantasy sites get out of the state. Yeah. So that was about my fantasy experience. I've actually recently moved to Denver. I did played some NBA, mainly because I just enjoyed the establish the run content. So it was, especially as it related to our Deck Prism NBA product. It was like good to do that work anyway. I learned a ton. I mean, yeah. Talk about content. I don't even know how y'all did it. Yeah. But well, I mean, the NBA thing. First of all, I hope to see you in the NFL streets this upcoming season. Second of all, the NBA product like just handling the news flow in NBA. I think anybody who's grinding it hard understands how difficult it is. And then also turning all that into projections is really an incredible undertaking for minutes, because every time somebody gets ruled out, you don't just have to change their minutes, you also have to change their usage and how they affect all the other players' assist rate and rebound rate and all that. It's just unbelievable undertaking.
It was truly impressive, especially on a day-to-day basis. I mean, as far as football is concerned, I'll obviously be a subscriber and, read and, suck in. And, I don't think I'll actually play any fantasy sports this year. Just too busy with our, with the other endeavors. But
yeah. Well, you mentioned models and moving models from sports to DFS. It sounds like, were you self-taught in this? How'd you get into the data science side of things?
When we first started the sports, when I first started the sports, it was line shopping. And then we hand built databases. So we hand built databases for the NBA points per quarter with the spreads. So literally we wrote them in by hand. Obviously quickly realized that there were better, more faster ways of doing that sort of thing. So we played the derivatives based on the databases we built, and we line shopped. We were in Vegas. This was before the real what I would say the coming together of the market, where everybody had the same line, and you could easily get off lines here and there throughout the day, just walking around Vegas.
Yeah.
So we started doing that, realized that if we wanted to do sports for real, we had to start building models, handicapping, et cetera. So started to learn the code. We still use a bunch of stuff from that time. It's written in VBA and Excel.
Yeah.
We've gotten away from most of it, but there are still some VBA in our shit. So, it's been a work in progress.
Yeah. You said that it wasn't a long-term solution to just line shop and do that. I know that there's some guys out there who would probably disagree with you, that think that, hey, we can chase steam, or we can get ahead of line moves and stuff like that, and we can pick off bad lines and we can make a living that way. It sounds like maybe you disagree. I don't know.
No, I don't disagree with that. I think that, there's advantage players today doing it. Yeah. But if you want to do it at scale, if you want to put the work in, put the money, the research money in, you're never going to get enough volume that way.
Right. Okay. Let's get into the betting stuff, because I think that's the most interesting stuff for sure. I think a lot of people, and I've encouraged people to say, hey, beating an NFL market is going to be really, really hard. Why not, if you have a smaller role, why not become an expert in WNBA or, WAC college basketball or XFL or NBA player props or whatever. But then we get into this whole concept of limits and getting booted from books and stuff like that. I know that you focus some on major markets. Is that your motivation for the major markets, just to get bigger limits and scale it and stuff like that?
Yeah. So Deck Prism is a full managed trading service. So we offer all products at all times, basically, is our goal. Obviously, we're growing, we're building, we're adding sports, we're adding markets. I've always been focused on main markets. One is a lot of the small stuff, and I know there's a lot of DFS players are new to sports betting, right? Yeah. Why are you new to sports betting? Well, it was way, way hard to do in the U.S. Certainly was not legal to do in the U.S. So a lot of these smaller type things, props, they're not available in the worldwide market. If you're set up to legally make wagers, you ain't getting down on how many points will a player score. This is not a thing. So your choices are, much more limited in that regard.
Yeah, got it. You mentioned legalization. Just as somebody who was in the business before legalization and now after, or what are some things you've noticed that have maybe changed since we've seen legalization across the United States, but on both sides of the counter? How do you think things have changed?
I'm not sure I'm a good person to ask, because I wasn't really involved in the betting here before that. So, the one thing that's changed for sure is the amount of investment money that's coming into the industry is, unreal. And, maybe maybe we've been wrong to take the slower path, turn it away, basically, and just, continue our building. Probably talking about Deck Prism now, but the amount of money that's been out there. I mean, some of these deals that have been done, some of the smaller places that seem to be wanting to say fight a DraftKings or a FanDuel like on their terms has surprised me. I do think that part will dry up soon.
Yeah, I'm curious what you think from a market perspective, from a lines perspective. Like, one thing that happened with poker was as it hit the boom, as more advertising was around it, the games got softer for players who knew what they were doing. I'm not sure that's the case in sports betting, or maybe it is. Like, as you've seen tons more recreational people come into the market, is it easier for professionals to make a living betting sports?
So I think, like, for, I'm not sure this is the best question for me. Is like Captain Jack would be the perfect person to answer this, for instance. Somebody who's in not that I'm in Colorado, so I do have a visibility into this, but like, I would guess that it's easier now. Nothing from before has really changed, I think. And you can take advantage of bonuses. You can take advantage of them. If you want to grind the free money, it's out there more than it was before.
Yeah, for sure.
As far as actually trying to like beat a major market, I think that's also easier. Reason is this. So let's say you're going into an NFL Sunday and you think that the Raiders receivers match up really well with the Falcons cornerbacks, or, going back to some good ETR stuff, some, Evan Silver, I don't think he knows where the underbutton is, but he has some really good insight. Okay. So you take like some of his really good insight from ETR. You're like, boy, I'm going to take this and I'm going to go out and beat the market, right? Mm-hmm. If you have you have one spot to see the line, you're going to be looking at, somewhere between a 3 and a 5% hold, depending on your book. And your information is going to have to be 3 to 5% better than what went into that line, than the market as a whole. I mean, when you think about all the things that are going into the game that are a factor, and you only really have one good one. Evan Silva's tip that this receiver has a great matchup, right? So, I'll hear like people talk about, let's say, team totals or whatever. Well, play that team total over. Well, if you go to your one book and you look at that team total, you might be looking at a 5 or 6% hold there, which means that your tidbit has to be 5 or 6% better than whatever went into that line. It's not. I guarantee you, whatever tidbit you got from Evan Silver, it's not 5 to 6% better, whatever. But if you've got 16 books and you've got various ways of, the derivative markets, the first half, here we go, your team totals. If you've got, great spot to like take advantage of, your free plays, your bonuses. Well, now if you compare all the lines, maybe you find that, Circus Sports has over 47.5 and FanDuel has under 49, say both at, minus 110. Mm-hmm. Well, now you're playing into basically no vig. So now if you choose in between these two, well, aside from the fact that, one line may be sharp based on the reason, leaving that part out. So two random books here for this example.
Sure.
Now, Evan Silva's tidbit about this receiver, if it's worth 0.5%, you've got a winning bet.
Yeah.
I mean, you're playing into no vig. So in that way, it's easier to win out. There's more outs and there's more different lines, and I think there'll be even more different lines coming soon. I think that some of the tools that are currently allowing the industry to somewhat copy each other, like use everybody's information easily, I think could go away over the next 6 to 18 months, and that'll cause for even more diversity of lines. I mean, one thing that if you're as more places in states like, Colorado, New Jersey, I think Arizona will be pretty open. If you live in one of those states, if you're a computer science guy and you want to get into this, write a scraper, put something that puts all of your books on the screen at one time. I'll bet you find stuff way more. I'll bet there's way more ARBs than you think. And then if you use a little bit of effort on top of that to where you're more or less picking one side or the other and not just guaranteeing your 2 cents, you definitely winnable. It's also a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that you're referring to some derivative markets, which I think you'll find more stuff off lines. Like, in other words, delta between lines would be a point and a half point. On the closing lines, though, for the NFL. It seems like you see almost uniform lines across the board, or a lot of times you see them. And so I've said, I don't know, maybe I could be wrong here. I've said, and maybe I'm wrong, that if you rolled out a bet on Sunday morning and you bet some sides and totals, around 11 a.m. Eastern, you're essentially flipping coins, right? Like by that time, the market is so efficient that, my dog Jerry could hit 50% over an infinite sample and just lose the vig, as you're talking about. It sounds like maybe you disagree, that maybe there's more to be said for waking up at 11 and just shopping a little bit.
Well, I mean, it's all about the shopping, right? I mean, if you're flipping, if you're flipping coins and you've got a 2 cent, a 2 cent arb or whatever, you're going to win.
Yeah.
If you're flipping coins into $1 with a 4% hold, you have no shot at all.
Right.
And I don't even know the NFL lines have to be the most, I would argue the WNBA lines could be sharper than NFL lines. More money doesn't have to mean, of course, more analysis going into the NBA lines. I mean, the NFL lines, but there's also more public action. There's more action in general. Who's playing the WNBA? People are trying to win.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Yeah. I want to get into how lines come about. Can you break down for the people NFL line origination from your point of view? And I have a take on this, but I'm curious what you think. You're definitely far more into basically what happens on Sunday night until a line shows up on DraftKings and FanDuel. How does the line originate?
Well, I mean, currently there's a number of places I think that have like what they call look-ahead lines. They're actually putting the lines up even earlier. I think there's a lot of people that could generally come close to, an NFL closing line ahead of time, just using like some version of a, market implied model, even if that happens to be in their head. Like in other words, the Bears closed 4 versus the Giants, the San Francisco closed 6 versus the Giants. Mm-hmm. Maybe the Bears versus the, maybe there's a 2-point difference there. That's not rocket science, right? So, so you start with that, and then, as, different people bet into different, places, and different operators have different, ways that they, may allow people that have a chance to win to play, or, will move the line. And then all the operators are looking at each other and looking at where the lines are going, and, use some combination of their action and also where other market makers are.
Yeah. I mean, I think the assumption from me and from, I guess, a lot of people is that like, some sharp offshore book like Pinnacle or Chris puts up an opener on Sunday night. Forget about the local headlines. They just put up something on Sunday night, and then they keep the limits relatively low, but there's still sharps betting into it despite the limits are low. And then the line kind of gets hammered into place. And then DraftKings and FanDuel by Monday find that line. And
it doesn't even have to be a sharp, right? And this is, I think, one thing that one reason why I think maybe the current operators are like leaving out some of their business. Plenty of people can bet Sunday night, Monday, and of course they're going to have a better chance to win into a less mature market. It doesn't really take much thought to come up with that. And I don't think those lines even move that much, though. I don't think like I said, it's not that hard to use some version of market implied to say, okay, the line's about this. And I don't think that the whatever you mentioned, a couple of like offshores, I don't think they're even, particularly sharp with any of this. They're just doing like everybody else. If there's one book that's really putting effort and has some good openers right now, it's Circa.
Okay. Yeah. And Circa is a legal book that maybe a lot of you guys haven't heard of. I know Deck Prism has a deal with Circa as well. I think the goal of Deck Prism is to help books. And a lot of times when people come on here, they're B2C people, business to customer people with front facing stuff. Deck Prism is B2B. In other words, Deck Prism is helping books get sharper lines on in-play mostly, or is this for pregame also?
We offer everything. We have slightly more in-play customers now than full managed trading clients, but we're basically, I don't know if you've heard of Canby, the company that until this week maybe does DraftKings, most of DraftKings trading. That's our business model. We're basically a much smaller version currently of Canby.
Yeah, so you'd be one to speak to what book's goal is, right? Obviously, they want to have the sharpest line, but once they are confident they have the sharpest line, do they actually want equal action? Are they willing to take stands? How big a stands do books want to take? Are they out there gambling, or are they just trying to collect their vig and move on?
I mean, the books that are, I think almost every operator in America, it's a business, and they're at the end of the day, they're looking to to profit for their investors, whoever they happen to be, and they're looking to appear that they profit for their investors. So they're trying to drive revenue. They're also it's a big the percentage that they're holding of that revenue is a big deal, especially when it comes to more institutions. Nobody wants variance in variance. If you're looking at a business from an investment perspective, variance in revenue is not good. Mm-hmm. So I think that's one reason why we see a lot of especially larger companies taking more of a larger hold, offering more what I call the carnival games, right? Because it's like you go to the carnival and you're supposed to shoot some air gun onto a thing, and most of us are so bad that we're just giving up tons of but there's a guy that can nail every one of those and win every freaking stuffed animal. Mm-hmm. What happens when he shows up to the carnival game and hits a couple? They come over and say, I think you're done for the night, sir, right? And that's what the most of the regulator. I mean, some of this stuff like the player props, I know you're really good at the player props. Player props are a carnival game. Anything that can't be so particularly live player props is like my best example of this, right? Mm-hmm. So if I'm an operator, if I'm Deck Prism, I am basically an operator, and I want to offer a live player prop. Well, what are the most important things that change that player prop during the game? Let's say you're watching it in the second quarter. What are the most important things that change it? It's nothing that my models can do, right? It's basically what is the usage? I mean, the usage is, and I'm pick a running back here. I mean, I can make an argument for quarterbacks, and literally the argument is we might offer some quarterback stuff this year for just this reason, right? Okay. But say a running back. Well, what is who's getting what snaps, right? So now if I'm an operator and I'm trying to offer this, to the world, I've got if I got one trader on the game, I got one trader versus 1,000 DFS players that really know what they're looking to take this stuff off, right? Mm-hmm. I'm going to lose to those guys. So what are my choices going to be? If I can't keep letting them take all the money. I'll go out of business, right? I can't offer this product for nothing or for a loss. My choice is basically to not offer the product, or to offer it and try to discourage or flat out tell the people that are going to beat me because they're going to view the game better than me and be better in this spot that they can't play that game at the carnival. Yeah, and I think that's what we see.
Yeah. And, I think there's so many people get frustrated with getting limited or getting kicked out of books. And it just is what it is for the reasons that Matthew just said. I'm curious if you think that with Deck Prism or with a model that's really good, forget about the carnival games, because there's some books out there, a lot of books out there that just won't accept even major markets money from sharps. And that seems really bad to me. Like if I forget about if I'm a sharp or not, if I want to bet on an NFL side, how can a book be afraid of me? What's your take on the whole kicking out people that are trying to bet major markets?
Well, I think that there's two types of customers, right? There's the type of customer that he's going to bet $50, doesn't care whether that bet costs him $3 or $7. He's more interested in a better interface, better customer experience, faster payouts, more advertising, all these things, right? And that customer is being very well served right now in the U.S. It's being so well served that all the operators are falling over backwards, basically paying more in acquisition costs than these customers are worth, right? Drive up the revenue, increase your. I'm not. They're making good business decisions, but they're all into the same customer. Deck Prism is the key to people that want to gamble. Our products we're all set with no delay. All the bets. We have no way. Our platform, our trading platform, has no way to not accept the bet. If it hits our platform, it's automatically a bet. I mean, we keep that, say, bookmaker's promise of these are the lines, any one of these that you want to bet up to the limit you get. We also offer the same limits every now. That's not to say that an operator can't choose to offer higher limits to some clients, but everybody basically gets a base limit at any of Deck Prism's clients, right? You just whatever the base limit is, it's theoretically transparent. And there's software issues with this. I'm not promising a perfect customer experience every time, but the idea is you can see the limit, you know what your limit is. As soon as you press that button, your bet is in. We accept all bets. The two. in my mind, the two most important things for operator or a bookmaker: take bets, and then when people want to send you their money, when they want to post up, be able to get that money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you're extremely confident in how strong these lines are, willing to take a bet from anyone, not delay, not limit anyone, not kick anyone out if the model is so strong. And by the way, I've played around win probability model. It is so hard to build a good win probability model. If you have this model, I'm sure people are going to be asking, well, why not, Matthew, why not just go out there and pound the shit out of the books? You could be a zillionaire. You could just go out there and start taking them off and betting yourself and all this.
Well, I mean, our models have been used to win money in the markets for years. It's basically the basis of our business is, we win money. As far as like being able to use it on a larger scale betting, it's not, I mean, I just talked about how, many of the places here are, made more or less offering, carnival games, not to mention the legality of taking, I mean, we've got a large company. There's a lot of people and a lot of effort and money that are going into our models, our lines, et cetera. And then taking that and, thus far we've passed on all possible betting choices. I mean, everything's across the state line in some way, right? Mm-hmm. So, trying to stay completely within the lines of the regulations. I don't think that will it get there. I do think it'll get there, but right now that's not really a thing.
I want to talk about in-game for a second. I know you had a bunch of controversy over the Aaron Rodgers playoff game with your in-game.
That was so unintentional, too. It was so unintentional.
Yeah. First of all, I don't bet a lot of in-game, but I know it's extremely popular. I've seen some reports that like 20, 30, even 50% of the overall handle is
It'll be
in-game.
It'll be especially once they get rid of the delay. No one likes playing into the delay. You get rid of the delay and accept all the bets, and the volume just goes.
Yeah, just let me explain what delay is for people who don't know. Sometimes when you're betting in-game, you want to bet something, and then you try to bet it, and the book gives you a spinner, and essentially they're deciding over like an 8, 10, 15-second span whether they're going to take the bet or not, which seems absurd. Like as the bettor, you don't get the chance to take it back after 15 seconds or change your mind or whatever. Can you explain what the books are doing during that delay?
Nothing is not about deciding. Well, I'm sure that can be true at times, especially, if there's a player that's a winner and a known winner and always looking for, the trader errors. I'm sure the traders may deny those bets because most platforms give them the right. But most of the delay is in an effort to combat the latency. So when I latency, the speed in which the game state data is getting put into the right odds. As an operator, you really have two choices. You can either have your lineup all the time or mostly all the time with a delay on it that then kicks out the bets that have moved during the meantime, giving you that 8 to 10 seconds, or you can not have your lineup when you're not sure of the game state information. Thus far, most operators have chosen the delay approach. The lines up all the time, which is absolutely fantastic for the guy that wants to bet $50, but he doesn't want to look at a lock screen. He wants to bet his $50. He doesn't care if he pays, this is a minor amount of money, whether he's paying $3 or $7, doesn't matter at all. He's there completely for the record. I mean, think about buying a beer at the bar. Do you really not, care too much whether the beer is $8 or $12? You probably go to the bar and pay the $12. It's probably a better bar. That's why they're charging you $12. I think the same argument's, being made for the $50 bet. Now, if you want to bet $5,000, if you want to gamble, or if you want to try to win, if you want to take it to the next level, and there's plenty of people around the country and the world that want to gamble. Well, this is not really a product you can play into, right? You have no chance to win. You're going to lose your money very fast. It's not reasonable. Our product with lower hold, all the bets go through, you're still going to lose, but you're going to lose a lot slower.
Yeah. I think for sharps, the in-game kind of reminds me of the old days. And you mentioned how it used to be where you could walk around Vegas and pick off lines that were 3 points apart or 4 points apart and get these crazy middles or just pick off bad lines. It seems to me like the in-game, if you have the in-game screen up and you're able to see everybody's line at timeout of Suns, Bucks, you could get some really, really far off lines. And that's kind of dangerous, I think, for books too, right? But I think for sharps, for people really trying to gain an edge, in-game market, if you're willing to put the effort in to be there, to grind the market, it seems like you could create bigger ROI in game now than pre-game. Do you agree with that?
I'm not sure. Because while there are plenty of off lines, if you run into two problems. One is that the friction that's put in between you and the bet, the delays, I'm not just the delay itself is along with the large holds, the low limits at time, if you're winning or getting there's a lot of friction in between in that bet, whereas pregame, there's generally a lot less friction. By friction, I mean how hard it is for you to get the bet that you think you're making into your account.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I'm curious about some general NFL takes. Last year, we saw the outrageous offensive performance, like outlier in terms of touchdown scored, in terms of how well offense is played. Do you think that was a blip due to the COVID year? And the narrative goes that, well, defenses need more reps in preseason and they need more continuity because they don't know what's coming. And also when offenses are on the road, there's no noise and quarterbacks can do more things in the line of scrimmage. I'm curious if you think the COVID created this outlier offensive year or this offensive year is here to stay, and how would you adjust models, or how would you think about adjusting models off the COVID year?
Well, the one thing that I'll say off the top is I think that the most important variable is the refereeing, the league-wide refereeing. And I don't think often until the season starts, and even during the season, it could be hard to tell. I mean, remember the one year where they called every personal foul? Yeah. So last year, you cannot hit the quarterback now. And people are looking at metrics looking at how long the quarterback is taking to throw the ball and say, wait a second, this is still the same amount of time, therefore there should be no difference. But if you're a quarterback and the guy's allowed to literally concuss you versus has to take you down very lightly, what is the quality of that throw during the same time period? I think that's been the biggest difference, especially the last couple of years. Also last year, they called a lot more of those personal fouls. Mm-hmm. I don't have the numbers, but this is my subjective from watching last year. They were calling a lot more of the one of my ex betting partners, he calls it hitting too hard. He got flagged for hitting too hard, which I generally agree with the rule change. I mean, let's keep the game around.
Sure.
But I think so going into this year compared to last year, how will they call it? How will they call those personal fouls? How will they call the roughing the passers? How are they going to call legal contact, defensive holding? There was one year, a couple of years ago, the numbers were way down. They were calling a lot more offensive holdings. They were calling that lobster block holding. They kind of stopped doing that last year. So I think the refereeing is a big factor, and I think it's hard to know until they basically start playing which direction that'll go.
Yeah. Before we wrap up here, I want to get your take for people who are just recreational NFL bettors, which I think is a lot of people. I encourage them to bet props if they have a smaller bankroll, and mm-hmm. Props we can definitely win at. We can help people, and we're going to put much bigger emphasis at ETR into helping people with props this year. I'm curious if you think, besides line shopping, besides props, there's anything else people can do, because I was a little bit surprised by your comment about, hey, Sunday morning. Maybe my assumption is that the NFL lines are very, very, very efficient. It sounds like you don't buy that as much. Is there any tips for the guy who wakes up Sunday morning and is like, hey, I want to bet some NFL?
I mean, this is not what you want to hear, but it's have more outs. I mean, line shop. I mean, line shopping is the answer. If you're firing an idea into if I tell you can bet on how many touchdowns are scored this year, and I give you one option is you can bet me at even money, and one option is I'm just taking this to extremes. You have to lay minus 150, and I'm gonna. Which one do you have a better shot of beating? It's not even close, right? So I'm beating a dead horse a little bit, but it's get more outs.
I guess my assumption was more that by the time Sunday at 11 comes out, even if you have 16 outs, maybe you can get a half point difference. Maybe you can get minus 110 versus minus 120 on something. Do you find that there's more variance there in the lines by the time Sunday 11 a.m. comes?
I would imagine, and remember, I'm not here on a daily or weekly basis sweating the exact line, man. There's like 20 books in Colorado right now.
Yeah.
I would guess that the lines would actually be more similar earlier. And the one thing that happens later is there's less time to react. There's more bets are coming in. I mean, as a trader, as a platform, more bets are coming in. You're more trying to respect your action. I mean, if it's Thursday afternoon, the only person that's really going to bet is, someone trying to beat you, say Thursday, 1 p.m., you might say, well, I don't want to get beat. I don't know what this line should be. So I'm going to make sure my line's exactly what, Circa's line is, what Pinnacle's line is. Mm-hmm. come Sunday morning, it's 15 minutes before the game starts. Now all your customers are betting, right? What are they betting on? Betting on the favorites and the overs, right?
Yeah.
So now if I'm the trader, I might jack that line up. I might care less if I give away a good bet on a dog here or there because I'm, making sure that, my customers are paying more for the side they're betting. So I don't think it's necessarily true that especially from a standpoint of the current market that they're betting earlier is, now if you're betting an opener based on some decent work you're doing, then, that I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, like, say, Thursday afternoon at 1 p.m. versus right before the game start, and you don't know anything about what you read on ETR, I'll bet you do better on right before the game.
Right. Yeah, that's
more choices of lines is why.
Sure. By the way, a lot of this stuff Matthew goes over in the book he wrote with the great Ed Miller called The Logic of Sports Betting. Really recommend you guys all check it out. One of the first poker books I actually ever read was called The Theory of Poker by David Sklansky. And I don't know if you guys got the kind of format and the name from that Logic of Sports
100%.
Betting. Yeah,
100%. We spent a lot of time on the name because the book title is like very important, very hard, and we spent a lot of time on the name. I mean, Ed in particular, and then none of the names were quite good enough that we came up with all of our just to give you an example, I think the 4-hour work week is like an A+ book title, right? Yeah. Who doesn't want to read that, right? Now, we didn't come up with anything close to that. So then we thought, wait a second, maybe we should just go with like a B title that may have staying power. And 100% the logic of sports betting it's meant to be the theory of poker for sports. That was 100% the idea in my head. Yeah.
No, that's such a great book. And I think almost still stands the test of time, does the theory of poker. But yeah, definitely check out The Logic of Sports Betting.
Exactly. I think the theory of poker is a fantastic book. One of the first ones I read, and makes you just think in better ways.
Before I let you get out of here, there's a lot of recreational bettors will bet trends, right? They say, hey, like the zigzag theory in the NBA playoffs, where if one team covers, well, the other team's going to cover next time out, or in the NFL, a West Coast team traveling east for a 1 p.m. game. Does any of that go into your model, or you think that's just all BS?
Dude, I mean, you just mentioned two trends that definitely have some meat to them. I mean, anytime you think about trends, you got to think about three things. One, what's causing the trend? Is there an underlying factor, right? So you mentioned two, which there definitely is. I mean, motivation is big in the NBA. How hard the teams play defense, which is the kind of the zigzag theory. You can look at the market. It's obviously a thing. You mentioned the time zone thing. I mean, the time zone, it's obviously a thing. Our bodies do better late in the afternoon, or middle afternoon than they do early morning or late at night. So that's definitely a thing. Now, but the second part is, are those things already accounted for in the market? That's harder to judge for sure. Mm-hmm. And if you're looking at a trend and you have a specific angle with the trend that you think other people may not know, you can absolutely bet it. And one of the best ways to find the trend is that data mining. I think it's very reasonable. I know this is kind of opposite, I think, to the answer you thought you were going to get, but I think it's very reasonable to data mine the shit out of sports and then look at when you get your off results, look at them with a very, very, assume that it's random, number one, but then think about it. Is there something that could be causing this? And if there is it in the market? And I know for a fact there's things out there that are not enough in the market that could be found in this manner. So I don't think that's necessarily unreasonable. Now, if you're thinking about the tout that says, well, the Green Bay Packers, after playing the Browns over the last 20 years, well, that's obviously worthless.
Right. Yeah. And it's a good point about what's in the market already, because, a lot of people think they have an edge with this West Coast traveling east, but that's already known. We need to find, if you want to win, we need to find the stuff that isn't known yet, the trends that isn't known yet, and it wouldn't be as publicly known. Obviously, markets are getting sharper, and guys like Matthew are creating these lines that we're betting into, and he's well aware of this, obviously.
You can take the trend to the next level, too. When did the teams arrive? Where are the teams staying? Mm-hmm. It's a kind of the same idea, just, with more work, with more effort, maybe with more information that's not out there.
If people are listening to this and they say, actually, Matthew's a donkey, I want to bet against his model, where can they bet against Matthew's numbers right now? We know Circa. Where else is Deck Prism?
Circa, Colorado. Outside the U.S. Pinnacle would be the major one that I think people will be able to access. I hopefully will be announcing some more deals within the U.S. over the coming months, but right now you have to be in Colorado and you have to play in game on Circa.
Yeah, I've actually never had the pleasure of betting on Circa yet, and I actually just got to Colorado about 3 or 4 days ago. So I'm looking forward to trying my hand against the Circa people and Matthew's numbers here. I'll be sure to punt a bunch off for sure. Um, okay, I think we've covered it all. I really appreciate the time, Matthew. Tell everybody where they can find you, where they can find Deck Prism. If they want more information on you or the company, let them know where they can find it.
My Twitter is at Davidow Matthew. Ed's Twitter, Ed's much better, well, at most things than me. I think it's Ed Miller Poker. Definitely hit him up. Our website is deckprismsports.com. It's fairly janky, but if you send an email, we'll get it. I'll also plug that we are particularly developers. We are hiring developers. If you're a developer, send us an email if you want to do work on sports.
I know, man. I've been trying to get my kids into coding. I'm like, if you want to have a good job when you're older, like, man, when they're 6 and 3 right now, by the time they're, in the workforce, I mean, coding is just going to be, everybody needs coders for every single job.
My son's 5. I'm working on multiplication. Your son might be a little bit smarter.
I don't think so. I'm just trying to push it as hard as I can. Okay. Really appreciate the time, Matthew. It's a busy time for you. Everybody check out Deck Prism, check out the book. For Matthew, for producer Luke, who is actually about to go celebrate England's, I don't know if they're going to win or lose, but producer Luke is very excited about the impending England game in the Euros. For Jerry, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.